Welcome to Even Tacos Fall Apart, a podcast where we explore mental health one story at a time. I'm MommaFoxFire, and in today's episode, we're exploring where creativity and mental well-being intersect. Content creation, whether that's podcasting, streaming, writing, filmmaking, photography, or any other form of artistic expression, can be a very powerful outlet for self-expression and even connection. However, it also presents unique challenges that can directly impact your mental health. Joining me today is Terry McGuire, a talented podcaster and content creator who has been on her own mental health journey with depression. She'll share insights based on her personal experiences and strategies she uses for maintaining mental well-being while pursuing her creative passions. In this episode, we explore the complex dynamics between mental health and content creation. We dive into the emotional roller coaster that often accompanies a creative process, the pressures of comparison and perfectionism, and the importance of self-care for content creators. Whether you are a content creator yourself or just intrigued by the impact of creativity on mental health, this episode is for you. My aim is to provide a supportive and inspiring space for conversation where we acknowledge both the joys and the challenges that come with the pursuit of creative endeavors. So let's embark on this enriching exploration of the connection between mental health and content creation on Even Tacos Fall Apart. Because even when those tacos do fall apart, creativity has the power to inspire, heal, and transform. Everyone, welcome back to another Mental Health Monday. Really excited to have a wonderful guest tonight. We are here with Terry McGuire, and we're going to be talking about her journey with mental health and also content creation as a podcaster. So looking forward to the interview tonight. If you have questions, I do have a question queue open. You can ask questions via the chat by typing an !Q and writing your question after that and hitting enter. Bite Mark is here. I am sure she's going to give us an example here in just a second. And while she is working on that, I'll go ahead and introduce our guest. So Terry McGuire is a former broadcast journalist and news anchor turned mental health advocate. After her worst ever depression, she asked herself what would have helped her climb out of the pit earlier, and her answer was hearing from other people who also had depression without having to join a group or actually interact with people, because that can be really hard to do in depression. She then figured out a way to provide that to others still in depression's grips and founded a nonprofit corporation, started Giving Voice to Depression, a weekly podcast, created a supportive online community, and created daily online posts offering information and hope. With the help of a small, passionate team, Terry's been doing that since 2017, and just this month, her podcast hit 1 million plays. So I have all of her socials and information. If you guys want to connect with Terry outside of this podcast, feel free to pop into any of those. And Terry, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
So Bite Mark definitely did go ahead and give us an example here. So her question in the question queue right now is, what is your favorite poem? And Terry, I'm just going to let you answer that one.
Wow. I knew that had been asked in a previous episode of yours, so I actually grabbed two. I don't know that I have a favorite poem, but there's somebody I've recently found online. I'm going to guess how you say his last name, Rodell, John Rodell, Roedel. And I picked two that are from him, by him, about depression. And I think they're good. I think they're really good. I'll just read a snippet if I may.
Absolutely.
Thanks. When we say I have depression. When we say I have depression, what you seem to hear is, I'm fragile. There is nothing fragile about us. We are the weathered seaside cliff that has survived a century of crashing waves and well-meaning stomping tourists who only came to visit to see if the ancient lighthouse on top of us still works. We are the bright wildflower that somehow finds a way to push itself up through the crack and dirty sidewalk outside of your apartment building. And then he ends it with, we have screamed into the bathroom tiles until our voices turn themselves into a crutch that we use to lift ourselves back up. We will fight like hell to stay here with you on Earth, no matter the invisible knife that's been twisting in our stomach for years. We are the rainbow amid the tempest, and there isn't a single thing fragile about us.
Oh,
so I thought that was a good way to start. Right?
Yeah.
He's great. He's
That's
just great.
fantastic. It's funny. Just some of we talked about it actually last week with Joan and Jane Landino. We talked about the content creation of people and kind of being fueled by life experiences. And a lot of that is kind of mental illness. And to hear the depression aspect put into a poem is just really beautiful.
It is.
It was very good.
I will let him know you think so.
Yeah. You are a former broadcast journalist and news anchor. What led you to that career path? And do you think it gave you a leg up as now a podcaster?
It was a really long time ago that I went into journalism. That would have been college choice at about 17 or 18. So I'm not sure how informed a decision that was. I wanted to go into law school, and they said, don't do pre-law. So either do English or journalism. And journalism seemed closer to law because I thought I was sort of digging for the truth, which I believed law did back then. And I believe journalism did back then. But we'll let all that go. I think it has been very helpful with podcasting because I've started on air, started interviewing people, doing stories when I was 19, which was more than 40 years ago. So I've been telling people stories for that long and doing interviews. And then, of course, like the editing, the audio editing and being able to take an hour-long interview and turn it into a 20-minute podcast and all of that is, it's not that it's easy, but it's second nature.
Yeah. That's really neat. That's one of my biggest challenges is the editing part.
It's hard. It's very hard to know what to leave in and what to take out. And you're especially when you're telling somebody's story, they're not telling me about their field trip or something. They're telling me about their mental health journey. Very often includes maybe a suicide attempt or certainly suicidal thoughts. And to take parts out is a decision. You have to. I have editorial control over the story, but I also have a lot of caretaking goes into those choices. And sometimes I make them in a protective way, and sometimes I make it just in a universal way, right? It's at the details of your trauma, for instance, that you experienced it is a very universal experience, to use the word twice. What you experienced may be too specific. And so sometimes I will leave out the details for all kinds of reasons. Tomorrow's episode, I did that, and so it'll be interesting. I hope the guest is okay with that. We'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough thing. And editing, I mean, it's part of why I do this as a live show, honestly. Yeah. Because then I don't have to edit any of the live shows.
Right, absolutely.
They just are what they are. But then... Yeah, then I can still use the content later if I ever get my shit together and actually do that, which is a challenge.
Understood.
We were talking before the show about being a single mom, and you were a single mom, and I am now a single mom as well. And it's like single mom, work full time, kids activities. I'll get to it if I get to it. And so far, the answer is I'm not going to get to it right now.
There you go. Yeah, you got to have priorities. We're all living in by triage, right? It's like, what's most important?
Yes,
and you
that is
do that.
True.
The rest may or may not happen.
Yep. What do you love now about creating content as a mental health advocate and podcaster? And what are some of the biggest challenges for you?
I'll start with the second half of the question. What I thought was going to be a real challenge was coming up with guests and coming up with different, I've already done the blank story. And I remember when we hit like 10 or 12 episodes, I thought, I panicked a little bit because, the first 3 or 4, it was like, that's the first time I've talked to someone about having bipolar disorder. That's the first time I've talked to someone about having depression and anxiety. And then I thought I had done it. But what I have learned, and what I've learned since is everybody's story is interesting. Everybody's story is worth telling. Everybody's story is different and the same. And that's no longer a concern. I have probably episodes to do another year. We just started the 7th year this month. So, I could probably go through, but not really, but, I have a lot of people I am interested in talking to and whose stories I would love to share. That's the part I love the most. I like creating the trust. And earning the trust, right? It has to be real. And I like real conversations. I am horrible with talk about the weather or the Green Bay Packers. I'm from Wisconsin, or the Super Bowl. I mean, I can do it for a little bit, but it's like going to a wedding reception when you don't know anybody. I can't live like that. So I get to have really real conversations every single week. And it's one-on-one, and I always tell them, because I'm not live, if you say anything you wish you hadn't said, just say, don't use that, say it again, or say, don't use that at all, or say, I'm not going to answer that question, anything you want. It's your story. So I love that. That's the part I have to kind of keep reminding myself that I love it, because all the rest of it can get to be so much that sometimes I just think I can't do this anymore. And I talk to somebody and I get to hear their story and they trust me with it. And I go, oh, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this. That happens almost every week.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's really good. I mean, I've hit that same wall where it's like, okay, we've already talked about anxiety, and I don't only interview people with lived experiences. I also interview mental health professionals. And what I found is that even mental health professionals, like, they've all got something to offer. Even if it's about the same topic, you're not going to have the same I could ask the same exact questions of everyone, and it would be a completely different conversation.
Exactly.
Which is wonderful.
Exactly. It is. And hearing that many different variations of a story similar to our own, if we're, in a realm where that's what we're doing, like mental health, I think there's something really comforting in that. I think it's interesting to hear the nuances and go, oh, I don't have that. Oh, I don't have it that bad. Or, oh, I have it worse than that. Or, oh, I don't have it with anxiety. But then there's also the ways that it's the same. And I'm surprised. I'm constantly surprised. I'm thinking, I have those very same thoughts. And sometimes it's, oh, that tool also works for me. And sometimes it's that drug did not work for me. I find it fascinating. It's just, as I said, they're the realest conversations I've probably ever had in my life.
I would agree with that. I mean, some of the things that I've listened to on your podcast in particular, which, by the way, if you guys haven't checked out the Giving Voice to Depression podcast, you absolutely, absolutely should. I did put a link to it in the chat. So if you're interested, that's one to add to your list.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But the conversations that you have, they're just very deeply personal, but at the same time applicable in so many ways to other people's lives too, including my own, for sure.
Yeah, that's how I feel about them too. It's I mean, how often do you say, like, so do you have suicidal thoughts? Or, where are you on that range between just sometimes or often wishing you wouldn't wake up in the morning to having attempted? That's not party talk. I mean, for me, because I don't know how to talk about anything else anymore. But, in general, that's a pretty, people are sort of surprised when you ask. But then it's like, it's in the context of this. So this is what we do. That's,
Yeah. Well, Kathleen524 is here and says, Terry, you're doing great.
Kathleen, thank you. Thank you, Kathleen524.
Do you have a favorite book or movie that you feel like more people should know about?
Oh, I am sure I do, but it is not coming to mind at the moment.
I get it.
Yeah, sorry. It's going on 9 at night. I'm old. I'm usually getting ready for bed now.
Yeah, I understand. I just I'm constantly looking for book recommendations. So if you do think of one later,
I will.
Let me know.
Okay, will do.
But I've read so many good books, and it's like narrowing it down to one can be really, really difficult.
Absolutely. Finding time to read books can be. Yes.
That's true. I mean, I read very late at night when I should be sleeping because I can't sleep. So there's that. Yeah. It's actually really a bummer.
Yeah, it is.
But I read a lot of books. So there's that. There's one movie that I would highly recommend if everyone has not seen it, and that movie is Ink. And Bite Mark is going to be very happy that I brought that up because I don't know if she's seen it lately, but it is such a good movie. I won't talk about what it is, but just add it to your to-watch list. It's fantastic. Phenomenal.
INK or INC?
INK.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm guessing tattoos, but we'll see.
Such a good movie.
I look for it.
And have so I've got these all over the place because I cry all the time. So and my kids make fun of me, but have some tissues. On hand for it, for sure. I cry at everything. I'll cry, oh my God, there's a raccoon on Reddit hugging a deer. Tears in my eyes immediately. It doesn't matter. It just is how I am.
You feel deeply.
Yes, absolutely. So speaking of feel a little bit deeply, depression can really be different for everyone. And I know that it's really easy for other people to do what they did with me, and that's to say, you don't look depressed. How can you be depressed?
Right.
So
You're
can
funny.
can you talk a little bit about what depression was like for you personally?
I can. And the nice thing about doing the podcast too is that when I speak about such things like, symptoms and experiences, I have not just my own, but 300 some other people's to draw on too. Mine was the variety. It's not, I used to say sad, but the more I think about it and the more I learn, I realize it wasn't sad. It was that sort of nothing. And isolated and just believing all the lies, just believing this is how I am now. This is how it is now. And this is how it will always be. And I always say when we're in it, we think we will never get out. And sometimes when we're out, we think we're not going to go back in. But I was in the never going to get out stage for an absurdly long time. And I mean years. And it's, I don't say absurd with judgment, really, or certainly not meaning that anybody who's having the experience of depression for years is doing anything absurd. I did not need to be in it for that long, as I learned when I realized, oh, hey, this is medical. I need to do something. And I'm one of those lucky people who actually responds to meds and therapy. And I was out of that pit, clawing out, but, rising, seeing light again. The first time in like 2 years, within weeks. And that's why, when you did the introduction about trying to, what would have helped, it was just like somebody had said, oh, honey, you've got this, like we would with any other illness.
Absolutely.
Wait, you can't swallow, your glands are swollen, you should get checked for strep. Wait, you're this, well, sounds like pneumonia. You may have broken your foot. But depression, nothing. Just nothing. And that's that invisible illness thing. And it's certainly not just mental illness. There are all kinds of people walking around hurting on all kinds of levels, muscular and, all kinds of levels. If you can't see it, you get more sympathy with a pair of crutches and spraining your ankle because people run ahead to get that door than if you are wishing you weren't alive, which is, but how would they know if we don't tell them?
Yeah.
And so there's all those levels.
That was one of my experiences as well. And I went through postpartum depression, and that was treatable with medication. And it was amazing. Like it was just a couple of weeks on the medication and I felt better. And so then later in life, I went through kind of a major depressive disorder episode type thing. And it was years. And it was one of those things that I tried medication and it didn't do anything. And so sometimes the medication works and sometimes it doesn't. But that piece of no one knows unless you talk about it. Nobody knows what you're going through unless you talk about it. And even whenever you do talk about it, sometimes it's like, are you just making this up? Right. Are you really experiencing this kind of thing? Right. So it's really hard. And if anyone is out there struggling with depression right now, just know that you are not alone. And there are a lot of people who believe you. And it's hard. It's hard. It's really hard.
When you just said you're not alone, and I think I say it in the open to my podcast. I've written so many versions. I'm not sure if it's in this one, but I think it is. And I think it has to. I think I have to change it, because if I had heard the phrase "you're not alone" when I was depressed and alone, I would have dismissed everything else that you said, because I'd have said, "You're wrong. I am. I was very alone in my depression." I think maybe I'm going to start saying instead, "You're not the only one." Because that I would have believed. Like somebody else somewhere else could be having the same experience. That I get. But don't tell me I'm not alone. So that's one of those phrases. Words matter, right? So I'm really grappling with and think that I'm going to re-record the Open to My Own podcast to change that. So if anybody was offended by me saying you're not alone and you are, I get it. Sorry.
Well, and we've talked also about social connections and online connections being as valuable as in-person connections. So if you do find yourself being alone, join a community. Like, you've got a Facebook group. I've got a Discord community. Join a community that can be there to support you and help you make a little bit of those connections, because online connections are still social connections. And so there are places, we have more options now
Yes.
than we
You don't
have
even
in the
to get out
past.
of bed.
Yes.
Can I talk about that briefly?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we just had a really good example of that. And I think that, especially with how people talk about social media these days, and I understand there's all kinds of negatives and dangers with them. But there are also, as you said, when you can find a community, when you can find a safe place. Ours is a Facebook community. There are like 11,000 people, and it's just called Giving Voice to Depression, cleverly. And we had someone the other day that actually started with her kind of coming at me about an episode. And I think the first thing she wrote was, that wasn't helpful. And I was working, I was working at night, and I didn't even know what she meant. Like, did you even mean to write us? I didn't know. And as it played out, she did mean to write us, and she had not liked an episode. And my first thought was like, well, there are 350 plus others, choose one. But it took me a bit to realize, we were just talking about sort of the flavors of depression, that she was angry, right? Mm-hmm. She was, there are all kinds of words you can use, but that one kind of covers it. So as soon as I realized she wasn't mad at me, and she is way smart enough to know that that's just one episode, she was just really negative. And that's how she chose, in a very roundabout way, to reach out for help. And as soon as I realized that and said, hey, can I ask the community to, I said, are you having a hard time? And she, yes. And can I ask the community to come to your support? And I posted her name in a heart and just said, a heart made out of hands, a stock photo. Can you do what you do, show some love, let her know there's hope. And I don't know, maybe there were 100 people who wrote, and then there were a lot more who, I think the word is reacted, when you get the thumbs up or the heart or the care emoji. And she went to sleep after we had that exchange. And when she woke up, she started reading through like 100 people saying, you won't always be down there. I've been there. I understand. And she said, I will not respond. And I said, nothing is asked of you. Nothing is expected of you. Just read them. And eventually she did. And she said, this is like really helpful. And then she wrote me privately, or us privately, and said that she was like really believing no one cared. And all of a sudden, she was getting care from literally virtual strangers. And she felt a sense of being cared for, being understood, being seen. And then someone else wrote and said, hey, I know these are all for her. Reading them is really helping me. And you just sort of watch this unfold and think, that's pretty amazing. And that is the power of community. That's the power of peer support. That's the power of shared experiences and being able to say, oh, I know. Oh, I know. You can't, there are things we can't know. We can't, because we haven't experienced them, outside or inside of the mental health realm. And there are things other people can't. But when you get somebody, when you say to, whatever, oh, right here, have you ever, and they're like, oh, all of it. It's just that knowing that, I'm not crazy, because I was thinking that this was just me.
That's really beautiful. I love hearing that your community just embraced this person and showed them it's not just like lip service either, because many times you get people saying, oh, thoughts and prayers and all of this, but no, it's a very specific kind of support that you get from people who have been through the same thing that you're currently going through. It's very wonderful.
Tell me about your community in case any of mine is listening.
Sure. So we have a Discord community. It's got lots of stuff about gaming. It has a dedicated space for lots of mental support things, whether that is peer support or something that sparked joy that you want to share, or mental health resources, websites, that kind of thing. And also memes. So if you need a little bit of laughter, we've got lots of memes and everything. And then we have like an IRL category. So things like pictures of your pets and pictures of yourself and that kind of thing, sharing music, sharing videos, sharing whatever it is. And it's a lot of fun. Everybody does well, not everybody, but we do little check-ins in the mornings to say, good morning and how are you feeling today and that kind of stuff. So I will say, as with the rest of my content, if you're watching this stream right now, you had to click through a mature filter. it is an adult space. So
Okay.
if you click through and you are a child, you probably ought to make sure your parent vets it before you come through all the way.
Okay.
Nothing explicit, but lots of cuss words.
Oh, okay. That was a good ask. All right.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I realized whenever I said adult space, I was like, oh wait, but not like that. Hold on.
I did wonder.
Yes. We do have a sex positivity channel that is locked behind a specific role that has to be manually assigned. Unfortunately, because not everyone can be trusted with conversations that are supposed to be positive around sex and that kind of thing. So
Or anything.
yeah. And Bite Mark says, and importantly, the morning check-ins are real, not just only say you're doing good and move on check-ins. Yeah. We have a system in place where it's like, how good are you feeling today? And it's a simple one letter kind of check-in, and then everybody gets how you're feeling. So, and if you want to ask for more support, you can pop over to the peer support channel. And
I just love that.
yeah, we put a lot of thought into building the Discord, and it goes through changes every now and then to make it even better. So
Good. Nice. Thank you for doing that.
yeah, absolutely. Do you feel that you have changed in either good ways, neutral, positive, negative ways from before you had to depression to moving through depression to then being on the other side of depression?
First, I don't know if you're ever really on the other side. I'm always looking over my shoulder. I always say I hear the Jaws music, dun, 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 So I think that I have not gone in as far. I have not had a horrible depression since I started this, since 2017, which is a really long time ago in this arena. And I don't know if that's because all of the things that were happening in 2017 or 2015 and 16 are no longer happening. And so those stresses and those traumas are more healed. Or if it's because I have learned so much. And I think that I always ask people what their tools are, how do they manage their mental health. A lot of them are going to be the same. And then there's a whole bunch that aren't. And one great example there about journaling. But I think that I have learned to recognize the early warning signs. And so just because I've made a living with my voice, believe it or not, for decades, if I started to get, nasal or anything in my throat, it's like, oh, I did not wait until I had a cold. I did not wait until I didn't sound right because I couldn't work. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as I have a drawer full of the things that work for me and, my neti pot and the vitamins and all that stuff. And now I'm that way with depression. So as soon as I flip somebody off on the freeway and think, oh, Terry, or I start using my absolutist language, right? Nobody, everybody, I now know that those are warning signs. And so I'll say, ooh, and as my little sister will say to me, the same thing we always said to our kids, if everybody, anything, it's you. If one teacher doesn't like you, okay, we'll deal with that teacher or learn to live with that teacher. If none of the teachers like you, it's you. It's so you. So those are the kinds of things I've learned, and I now can say, oh, it's so me. And what do I have to do? And then right now, literally this week, I'm kind of there. And I'm going to take a break for the first time in way too long because I know what could happen if I'm not. My mother recently died. Our mother, my little sister and I, who started the podcast this summer, knowing that was coming because she was 98, I got ahead of it because I was like, I could be a hot mess when this happens. And I cannot afford on any level to go back there. And I got a therapist and said, I need you to help me get ready for my mother's death, even though, at that point she wasn't dying. And got through it, grieving and sad and all the things you are when a parent dies, but not depressed. And I was just like, oh, and I don't know that I would have been. How do you know if you would have been? But who cares? You're not. That's what matters. So was that a very long answer? I don't even know what the question was. Was it
totally
the answer
fine.
to your question? Okay. If it wasn't.
Well, first of all, I am very sorry for your loss. No matter how old, no matter when it happens, losing a parent is very difficult.
It is the thing. Yeah. Definite thing.
So I want to bring up something that Bite Mark said, and then I want to talk about something that Growling Octopus said in the chat here.
Okay.
So Bite Mark said it really sucks that talking about it, depression, can help depression, but being depressed makes it hard to talk. And that's something that I also want to talk about, because in your bio, you talked about, being in depression's grips, and you also talked about how being depressed can make it really hard to interact in a group setting.
Absolutely.
So what were some of the ways that you handled your symptoms of depression? What's in your toolkit, essentially, right now?
Well, it's essentially you add those last two words right now, because I had none before. I didn't even know I was depressed. That's why it lasted so long. I really just had no idea. And it wasn't until I crossed a line in my own mind that scared me that I went, I think I need to call my doctor. And then things got better. Now, I would say the primary one is what I said, the looking for the early warning signs. That is the one thing that I think has kept me, afloat. I could say, and probably should say, movement and exercise and getting outside and yoga, but I don't really do those things because I'm just kind of always working, and I'm working on that. I do journal, and that helps. Just get it out. Sometimes it's like food poisoning, but it's in my head. I just gotta get it all out, if you know what I mean. That was the thing I was going to say. This woman, I won't lift up a journal because somebody might do a freeze frame and actually see it, but she did her journal. We'll do it. And so like that. And then she turns it and writes that. Turns it, writes. So by the time she's done with a page, no one, including her, can read it.
Yeah.
And she is getting the ugly out, is what she called it. I think that might have been the name of the episode. And then she actually paints over them sometimes. And it's everything about it I love. I can't paint, and I would probably get dizzy twirling my page, but it's safer. It's certainly safer. So I do think, I have at least my sister in my life who knows about depression, because she has it. And so I don't know that I have the, even still, I don't know that I have the awareness in it, even early in it. She just the other day said to me, it's you. It's you. You're saying everyone. Do you realize you're mad at? And she sort of checked off my, I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of am. I'm kind of mad at everyone. So, it's good that she's a reality check for me, but there are really nobody else. And it's very interesting to me that you would think when you start a depression podcast and are as open and honest about it as I am, a friend without it would say, hey, how would we know if it was bad? Because I'm really isolated, right? I mean, this cabin I'm in is a cabin. I live in the middle of nowhere. And I moved away from my whole support system. So not a good move if you're listening. But, no one says like, well, since we never see you anyway, it wouldn't be different. We wouldn't say like, oh, Terry's really gone underground, because that's where I live. So no one has ever asked me that, which I find fascinating. No one has ever said, so I know you have depression, but do you have it now? No, nothing. Yeah. So it is, yes, it's very important to talk about it. Yes, it's very hard to talk about it. And it's very important to talk to people you can trust. And again, that might be strangers. That might be an online community, because you might not have someone in your life who will listen to it and not say, oh, I have a very dear friend who has said on more than one occasion, I just don't think you handle life shit as well as everybody else. And I want to go back to that poem, right? Yeah, I'm that little flower coming up through the crack. Don't you dare, But if you don't know, you don't know. And it's just like, she's sad again? She's moody. And I'm actually not a moody or a sad person. I just have friggin' depression. And, when it takes you out, it takes you out.
Yeah.
What do you do? Oh,
sorry. I was just going to say, have you, it's all good.
I'm used to doing the interviews.
You listen, if you want to ask me questions, you're more than welcome to. But so have you considered implementing any sort of like check-in with your community where it's like, here's my level of feelings today. What's your level of feelings today? Have you considered something like that?
We have, we did for years, I would say. I think that I have to be a little more cautious about what the scale is. Because if you can say from, I don't really do great because, I don't know that we are. But, from whatever the beginning would be, that end, over to like, I could really use some support maybe, as opposed to, I think we went to like, I'm really in danger even. And then there's only one other person who's on that Facebook community with me. And she's in Texas, where you are. And
hey,
we can't be a two-person crisis line.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
we're not. We just, it's irresponsible. So I think that I will go back to it, and I appreciate your reminder. But I think I got to dial back that other end. And if somebody is really in danger, then they can private message us, and we can, in some way try to connect them.
Absolutely.
One of the recent times that happened, he was in Australia. I'm not. So we just kept in touch until his wife showed up and got him to a hospital. But that's something I have to be very aware of, and it's a
Absolutely.
line. I'm a peer support specialist, but I'm one person.
Yeah. And maybe if you put your scale up and everything, and if then at the end of the message you say, if you are feeling any worse than this,
Yes.
even an inch, here's a
Yes.
link to whatever crisis. I know that there's a wiki page, and on my website there's a list of resources across the world as well. So
good.
there's lots of pages you could pick from to say, here's
Good.
a link to some crisis support. If you're feeling any worse than this today, please reach out through those. You do it however you want to do it.
I appreciate it. I will come looking for that link on your page, because
sure. I can post it even.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
it's
So once you're online, you are global. It's not like there's some filter. Thank goodness.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like, I'm not in Australia, and I had somebody reach out to me fairly recently saying, what can you help me get some help with this housing situation? And it turned out they were in the UK, and I was like, listen, I'm in the US. However, I know a great charity full of mental health advocates. Let me connect you with the founder of that charity. And it's like, okay, I can connect you. And then I got to be like, you're not even in my time zone. I can't, it's off hours. I want to get you support, but I want you to be able to talk to somebody when everyone is awake. Kind of thing. So
wow, that's great.
It's
Good work.
I always feel bad though. I always feel bad when you get there and you're like, I want to help you so much.
I know.
But yeah.
No.
So the other thing, Growling Octopus put a comment in here about Fall Out Boy releasing a new bipolar theme song music video a few weeks ago called Love from the Other Side. And he said that they really enjoyed the phrase of kind of on the other side of depression. So I just want to say that sometimes, music can also be very therapeutic. So
Huge.
if you are in a depressive state and you're anything like me, you got to watch what you listen to.
Oh boy.
Most of the time I can listen to anything, and there's constant song lyrics in my head. My kids make fun of me. It's okay. But when I am in a really super down, dark place state, it's like I have to listen to some music, and I have to very specifically keep some music out. So music is great, but asterisk, be careful.
Don Sircone, who maybe it was last week. It was a rerun, so my memory, it was about 2 years ago. But he said that he has to listen to music that's the opposite of how he feels. I mean, if he feels good, he can listen to anything, as you just said. But if he is in it, he has to listen to something that has a little bit of energy and positive messaging, which I assume is what you were referencing. And I'm actually working on an episode. I'm sitting here surrounded by papers and lyrics. The other night when I also could not sleep, I got to the scrolling point. I should get books by my bedside like you have. And I saw obviously a band, 3 musicians, in some interesting place. And I thought, I bet they chose that for the acoustics. So click. And I hear in the first phrase is, I know it's not much, but I slept through the night. And I'm thinking, I'm not, but go on. You know?
Yes. Continue. How did you do that?
Exactly. And then it was like, think I'm getting better, you know, and that he had opened the blinds or the shades on the window and actually heard the birds sing as opposed to just ignoring all of that. And I was like, I think this is about depression. And I'm listening more, and then I look up the name of the song, and I'm like, oh, it totally is. So I wrote the band, which is the Tours, Tors in the UK, and I said, is this about depression, and will you talk to me? And they said, yeah. So I just did an interview with them about how the song came to be, and it's a good one, you know, because it starts with the reality. Great. You know, you gotta let them know, and then it's, you know, that he in fact was well enough to, you know, get out and write a song and be performing it. And of all their songs, it went like, I don't know if viral is the right word. I don't know what constitutes viral and what doesn't, but they got more than 1 million streams in about 2 weeks. So I would have to guess that is.
I would call that viral, yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. And it's about depression and anxiety. So, you know, there is that, we're back to talk about it, right? That's it. When you do, you're going to find jerks. There's jerks everywhere. You can't say anything without somebody coming at you these days. But if you do say, you know, I've got blank, or I live with this, or sometimes I feel, in my world, about 99% of the time, someone says to me too, oh, my mom does, oh, my brother does, oh, my wife does, my husband, you know, whomever. And that's the starting point, right? Because then you can say, let me buy you a coffee. Let's talk. I don't do that. I've never done that. I say that like that's a normal thing to do, and it might be for someone, but I've never actually done it. But I mean, buy the coffee. But I've had a lot of those conversations. And anytime I speak publicly, you know, there's always a cue afterwards, you know, and it's not me. They're not wanting to talk to me. They're wanting to talk. They're wanting to talk to somebody who's going to say, that sucks. I'm really sorry, you know, and I am, and it does. You know, if I talk to 10,000 people with depression, it sucks for every single one of them. It's like more for some, less. But, you know, it's not like it's, yeah, well, we've all got it, don't we? You know, there's none of that, because even in the rearview mirror, it's scary.
I was just talking to someone at work. She had to have surgery on her foot, and she was on the phone with me, and she's like, you know, I asked her how she was doing, and she said, I'm doing okay. You know, my husband's having to bring me coffee because I still am using 2 crutches, and I can't, you know, even bring coffee to my desk and all this stuff. And then she said, but a lot of people have it a lot worse than me, so I don't even know why I'm complaining. And I said, stop. Just because other people are worse off doesn't invalidate you having a hard time right now. And so she was like, oh, wait.
Thanks.
That makes sense. And it's like, yeah, depression is different for everyone. One person might have it objectively a lot worse than you, but subjectively your experience is bad for you, and that's valid. So I don't know where I was going with that, but
and ours can change. Ours can change from episode to episode, if that's the right word. Some people call it bout. Some people never get out. And it can also change within it. You know, there were days I was like, okay, I can do auditions today, or okay, I can go to this thing I have to go to. And then there are days you're like, oh, hell no. And then there are those days that you go, and again, I live in Wisconsin, as we were talking about. So when I say come in with a coat on, I don't mean a jean jacket. I mean, we're talking the whole big parka thing. And I remember coming in the front door, like, barely, you know, just like driving home, like, you know, I was coming back from some days-long road trip and barely made it with my eyes open, and walk in the front door and crawled in bed and would wake up hours late, like the next day, in my coat, in my boots, in, you know, just, it took everything for me to do whatever stupid little thing. I shouldn't say it was probably bring somebody to the doctor or something, but, you know, something I had to do. It felt stupid because everything felt stupid because I was depressed.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. So you said you moved to kind of away from your support network. So what do you do now in terms of self-care or other protective exercises or activities to kind of prevent depression in spite of losing that support system that was around you?
I do drive back into town. I've never called where I used to live town, but I live in I do now, at least once a week to spend the night with a girlfriend and her husband so that I'm having some connection.
Yes.
I would say my primary protective factor is having a purpose, having a mission, because depression told me, and many of us, just unrelentingly on a loop that repeats, that I had no value, that I had no worth, that, anything I'd done in the past was a fluke, and nothing I was going to do in the future was going to make any difference in the world. And in fact, maybe the whole wide world would be better if I just wasn't here bothering everyone. And I know that's not true now. I know that's not true, partly because of what I do and the impact that it's having. And when I hear the stories, someone heard a story, someone was on the website, not the website, well, we do have one, but, the website isn't really helpful. It's just informative. But in the group, in some other way, heard me talk someplace, saw us tabling, whatever it might be. And then I think, yep, so it's a lie. When I hear that now, I know it's a lie because what I'm doing does matter, which means by extension, I do. And so I think that is actually one of my most protective things that I do. Mm-hmm. I know I know the whole list, it's going through my head, but that is the primary one. And because I do it so damn much, I don't get to the others very much.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
I have kids, I stay in touch with them and stuff.
I know. It's hard whenever you have like the one thing that you're so focused on, and then you've got the other things that you're like nagging kind of behind your ear going, you should do this too.
Exactly. Well, sleep. I should say sleep and hydration. If I don't get sleep, and there are lots and lots and lots and lots of times I don't. But that is key for me. Mm-hmm. If I was mentally healthy and didn't even know how to spell depression, I would still need sleep to function in a productive and kind and socially acceptable way. Because I can just I'm not that nice when I'm tired, and I'm tired kind of a lot. So be warned. Yeah.
Yeah, breakfast with new friends. Absolutely. Kathleen's talking about having breakfast with new friends.
Nice.
That's a really good one. Yep.
That's sweet.
So we've been talking about your podcast a little bit, the Giving Voice to Depression podcast. How did you start that, and what were some of your fears, and what were you most looking forward to when you decided to start the podcast?
Fears looking forward to, where do I start? I was most looking forward to providing what I wish I had had. And that is a very real answer. When you said in the introduction that I'd asked, what would have helped. And I really asked myself that question, right? It was like, part of this is really selfish. It's just straight up me not wanting to have to think of all that time as lost, just lost for no good reason. I'll walk over broken glass to get somewhere, but I don't like just cutting my feet, so it was like, make something of this, turn this into something that makes that at least kind of worthwhile, even though, for God's sake, it didn't have to last that long. But I looked forward to being able to say to somebody, hey, reach through and just say, there are ways out. Take my hand, take somebody's hand, listen to this story, listen to this story, listen to this story. And I never had I couldn't do this podcast where it was just me going, so then for 350 episodes, who cares what I did? I mean, I'm one story. But when you can give hundreds of them, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're into something that's really helpful. I'm really distracted by thought because the Kathleen who is writing with that last comment, I realize who she is tomorrow's episode. So listen.
Oh,
it's about the Little Heart Project. Yeah. So anyway, my fears would have been never being funded because, those 2 years I was hardly, bringing it in. Not being heard, not getting it out there. Like, how do I from here let people know? It's not like, well, my marketing team, with our advertising budget, it was me. So, in our first year, for example, the first full year, we had 16,000 plays. And I was like thrilled. That's in my world, that is a big number. If that was in my bank, I'd like it. And and then this year, we had that in the first 15 days of January.
Wow.
So,
That's
it's
awesome.
like that's how it has grown. But I was worried that everybody was right. And I mean everybody who I ran this by. Family members, siblings, mom, everybody said it was a horrible idea. Just a horrible idea. Don't do it. Nobody wants to talk about their depression. Like, how embarrassing is that? And why would anybody want to talk about, like, bad parts? And then if they did, nobody would want to listen because that would be depressing. Like, if you already feel bad, that would make you feel worse, which is the same kind of nonsense as asking somebody if they're suicidal makes them suicidal.
Yep.
I didn't know any of those things, though. I was just starting. So those were my fears, and those were my hopes. I think I answered both of those. I know I distracted myself in the middle with tomorrow's episode.
No, that's okay. Listen, we get distracted here. And we get so distracted that I have a command that I can't remember that will pop up some specific emotes for getting distracted in the chat. But I can't remember what it is because I just...
You're distracted. Good for you.
It might be sidetracked or something. Hold on, let's see. Sidetracked. There it is.
Look at you. Look at you. There you go.
I'm like, last time I couldn't remember it, I did try distracted, and it wasn't that. So that's all right. Yeah, it's kind of, I really hate when people say no one wants to hear that. No one wants to listen to that.
Right.
And it's such a common mentality. I do think that it has lessened. And I think that's one of the good things that came out of COVID, quite honestly, because there were some good things to come out of COVID. They weren't a whole lot. But one of them, besides just being able to work from home, God bless that. That's really amazing.
And do therapy virtually. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Also, the ability to get a document notarized online.
Oh, nice.
You don't realize how it's the little things. Listen.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But COVID gave us the ability to recognize, hey, we've experienced this large trauma as a society. All of us have gone through it, and everyone experienced it differently. Let's talk about it because your experience wasn't my experience, but boy, talking about it helps me. And it's like, hey, click.
Yes.
There it is.
Yes, absolutely. I say that it helped us realize how fine the line between mentally well and mentally unwell is, and that we can dance on that line, we can cross that line, we can go back and forth, we can fall on it, we can lay on it, we can straddle it, all sorts of things, but it's right there.
Yep.
It is right there.
And it moves sometimes.
Oh, it does. You are so, and sometimes it's fine. It's ugly, and sometimes it's like, oh, you got some room here, you could, you are right. It does. It's a moving target.
Your sister started this podcast with you, right? And I know that she retired last year. Has it been hard to keep things going without her or just different?
I would say different. I actually called her before this and said, hey, she asked me these 2 questions about you. What would you say? And she goes, well, tell her it wasn't a fight, but it was.
No, I didn't get that from her leaving at all. So
I'm glad to hear that. Because I was just scared to do it alone. I was like, I wasn't, I was like, plus you got to, even like this, right? You got to riff. I don't want to use that word, but I think that might be a word. But when you can go back and forth, and she's very West Coast mentality, and I'm very Midwestern, so it was sort of that play too. I loved doing it with her, but I also 100% understood 5 years in when she said, okay, you good? You good? Can you find somebody else? And then, we had started saying, we're not experts, we're not therapists like you do. Now I have a therapist as a co-host. And so that's really nice because she's also on our board, Dr. Anita Sands. And it has been really nice, totally different experience because, it's not like, hey, but I also never slip up and call her by one of her nicknames and have the guests laugh when I said like Bugaboo or Bridgie-Boo or Bugalug or something and they laugh. But she, it is nice to have a therapist because there are times, when we were saying, it can't be a one-person crisis line or something. I say, okay, so when one of your clients talks about that or talks like that or brings that up, what are some of the things that work to help them move past that, to help them process that, to help them be safe in it, and those are questions that are nice to be able to ask of someone who has a lot of experience helping people manage their mental health, as opposed to just the two of us going, well, I don't know, not that we said, I don't know a whole lot, but we probably should have. Yeah.
Well, and I did that at the beginning. So I didn't start off interviewing people. I just started off talking about things mental health related. And I would do all of this research and talk about different studies and stuff. But at the end of it, like, people who were there listening had more questions than I had answers to. And so I was like, you know what? That's kind of how I started. I was like, you know what?
Right.
Let me find somebody who can talk about that. And I started with Elizabeth Clemis, and she was my first guest, and we talked for like 2 hours. Like, it was just effortless. We just talked, and it was fantastic because she was a therapist and she could actually answer some of the questions. And so it really just took off from there. It was like, yeah, that's the ticket. Having someone who can actually answer questions. It's great.
There you go. It is easier to ask.
It is. It really is.
Being on this side of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I love talking to people about their personal journeys too. And so having that mix, I think, is really cool. And it sounds like that's part of what you're doing as well, is just now you've got the mix in there where you can say, let's talk about some real solutions for real people. And then let's talk about some personal journeys and not compare experiences, but hear about other people's stories. I think that's really important as well.
And I think that doing the interviews, I guess, is getting those stories. I think that sharing a bit of mine or ours helps people know that you get it, and that it's okay to talk about. You know, this interview that I was just talking about, the Tours band, we were talking sort of like, got really dark. That kind of level, which is fine. Anybody listening knows what really dark means to them. And it's probably in the realm of what really dark meant for him. But I said, like, and kind of got into the weeds a little bit because I've recently made a video about depression's lies and wanted to know what his answer would have been for the questions I asked the people in the video. And that was, what does your depression tell you about you? And he answered, and I was like, that is so interesting. I wish that was in my video. But, then he said, I didn't get that dark in the song, of course, because he's trying to make a commercial hit, and has to be a bit careful because if you talk about it too much and too deep, So I don't know where I was going. Totally lost my thought, but I think the front part of that made some sense with whatever we were talking about.
Yeah, we were
sharing our own stories. That it lets other people know that it's safe to do that, right? That you're willing to be a little vulnerable and disclosing as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Look at how I wrapped that up. I found it. I got back to it. Thank you.
I do the same thing where I'm like, what was I? Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Go back.
Good for you. I don't do that very often. I usually just go, lost it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, sometimes that does happen. Growling Octopus says, one time during an episode 20 years ago, I went on some really dark rant to a friend and AOL Instant Messenger. Oh boy, a little aim for you. That dates that for sure. And he posted it on his website because he thought it was some sort of fancy poetry. Oh no.
That is terrible.
Oh man. God. Yikes. So did you talk to them about that, Octopus? Did you talk to them about that and be like, hey, that's not cool?
Take that down. Yeah.
The internet back then was the Wild West, though. So, anything goes.
Yeah, like it's so tame now.
No, that's
so
true.
Respectful. Yeah.
That is true. It's slightly more moderated, I feel like, in some instances. Oh, you didn't really care. Okay, well, I'm glad that you didn't really care.
Good. I don't even see the chat. Are people really writing, or are you just?
Yeah, no.
Okay. I believe you.
Yeah, it's on Twitch right now, and so people are typing into the chat to say, here's all this stuff. I actually have 3 screens.
Get out.
So I do.
Generational difference. Yeah.
Yeah. I work for an architecture engineering firm, and I do proposal management. And so most of the time I have to have an active document on my screen, and then whatever the client request is on the other screen, and then whatever graphics is over on the other screen. And so, like, to pull it all together, I need the 3 big screens. And so that's what I have.
Wow, that's impressive.
Oh, yeah, it's helpful. And when I go into the office, I only have the 2 screens, and it's a big bummer.
Yeah. So
But I
can't
only
work like this.
I only go in once a month, so it's fine.
Oh, yeah. You can live with that.
Yep,
We can
absolutely.
do
So we were talking about your sister a little bit. Is there anything that you wished y'all would have done differently in the time before she took a step back, or are you pretty happy with how that just played out?
I think it played out okay. My favorite part of it, and actually they're two of my very, very favorite episodes, because of the level of intimacy, right? I mean, they're always intimate conversations because we're talking about really private things. But I don't know how old she is. She's younger than me, 50-something. That we have that many years together, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a real, we did a 2-part goodbye, essentially. What had she learned? What did she learn about depression? What was the experience of being a co-host of a depression podcast for 5 years like? So out of her comfort zone. She is not. I mean, I was a journalist, I mean, it's like I was a voice talent. This was not a huge leap for me. It was in many ways, but you know what I mean. And for her, completely out of her comfort zone, completely, which made it a huge act of love that she did it for me and with me. It was actually so I brought up my mother earlier, and I'm not going to cry or anything.
Cry away. Listen,
no,
it's fine.
That's right. You're a crier. I'm not.
I am.
Trauma. The last episode that she heard, I held my phone up to her when she was in the hospital bed, and it was Bridget's first of the 2 goodbye episodes. And she heard, like, Bridget saying to me, yes, I said, she's my little sister, that you've always been there for me. And I saw my mom's bottom lip was quivering. And I was talking about how Bridget has the version of depression that is negative, but I did not use that word. And I said it rhymes with itch or something. And my mother chuckled, and this is all like close to the end here. And so she got to hear her 6th and 7th kids, we're the babies, having this really special, intimate moment together. I mean, also intimate on the World Wide Web. But she got to hear it. And so I'm really happy with the way it ended. There was a, hey, I'm coming up on this. I'm ready. I was able to say to Dr. Sands, can you step in? I don't think there was a week that I didn't have a co-host. And Bridget and I very gracefully wrapped up her tenure, and she still has her mic and everything to jump in if needed. And then Dr. Sands was there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm glad that it. Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it really was just tied up very nicely, and it was a beautiful experience, for both of you.
It was intentional. I miss her, and and I think it's great that Anita's doing it, because I think Anita's great. I really do. I like working with her too. So I can roll with that. Yep. I've never had one, when I was in news, I didn't have one co-host, and is that what they called them? Co-anchor. I didn't have one co-anchor. They kind of go through, and that's life. Progress. It's,
That's true.
Time for change.
It is life. Sometimes your co-anchor changes in life.
Sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. Yeah.
That's true. That's a better way to put it, honestly.
I think it's a country music line. But anyway.
Look, we all, what is it? Nothing new is created under the sun.
Is that another lyric?
I don't know if it's a lyric. It's just a saying.
Oh, okay.
It's a way to say that there's just nothing original. Like, everything plays off of something else, and all the stories that you read, they all play off of other stories, and that kind of thing.
How many times have you seen the same movie? Yeah. I know how this ends. Yeah.
Yes. What was it? Oh, the Cocaine Bear. Have you seen the previews for the Cocaine Bear movie?
Oh. No.
I just saw one yesterday. It's the first one that I saw, but it's the second time I heard about it because my 9-year-old mentioned Cocaine Bear to me. And I was like, what did you just say?
Right?
And so I saw a preview for it yesterday, and my 16-year-old was like, is this how desperate we are to make new movies now? We're talking about a cocaine bear.
Wow. Please tell me it's animated, but I don't know if that's better or worse. Oh,
nope.
That's bizarre.
It's not. I can't. It just, I don't know. I'm sure I'll see it at some point. I'll probably wait till it's out of theaters, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a weird one. Looks like a weird one. The whole premise is that somebody drops cocaine into a national forest out of a helicopter.
Oh.
And I guess a bear eats it and then goes crazy. I don't know. That's all I got from the preview. Who knows?
Wow. Wow. It sounds like a must see.
Yeah, totally. What about content creation has surprised you the most?
Oh, boy. And I guess I'm going to have to ask for a definition of content creation. You mean the podcast is content, the social media is content, all of it?
Yeah, I would say all of it. I mean, it's all content creation. It's kind of like you do the podcast and the other things are related to the podcast as well. So a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a lot of work. We have made, well, gosh, there's a lot of days since February of 2017, and we have made at least, apparently my phone's on, we have made at least one post a day, at least, and sometimes 3 or 4. And that takes a lot of time. And that's across then, we thought we had it with Facebook and Twitter, and then there was Instagram, and now there's TikTok, and I sound old saying this, but there's just more. It just becomes more and more and more. And are you really going to do it? I am never going to dance about depression or do some cute little thing with my nails. It's just, I don't really know how to use that one for my message. But I don't know. I think that maybe I'm surprised that there's a constant audience for it. I have started, it took me probably 3 or 4 years to figure out you don't have to come up with all of this content yourself, Terry. You are interviewing people. You're doing a podcast every week. Take quotes from the guests. And so 4 or 5 days a week, that's the content. And, there's the cross-pollination there, but there's also, it's original content because I did that interview and that person said that to me. And that's really, I like that. I like that it's not Brene Brown all the time or, somebody else who you can read with a different stock photo behind it on somebody else's site. The stuff that's on ours, it's ours. Till somebody steals it and uses it as theirs, but it's ours when it starts, which is fine. And I have to let that go because if the message is what's important, get it out there. Get it out there. So, I don't know if that answered your question. I don't know if that's a surprise. I think it is just a lot. It is just a lot. I am tired. I will be honest with you. Some changes have to come because it's it's a lot. But the amount of engagement is always a delight. When I post something and we've had 2 go viral. So I guess I do know what viral means. In the last two ever. And they were both in, say within the last 2 or 3 months. And you just to watch something 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, you're like, wait, what? And it's surprising what it is, and you think, all I can think of is it's some influencer posted it because it like that day. Oh, that's the message. That's the one, one was just was that Leonard Cohen? It was a Randy Newman lyric. It was, I almost started singing You Should Be So Glad I Didn't. The song Feels Like Home. I don't know. It was, anyway, he wrote it. And there's a line in it. Talking about. Right? Yeah. I won't sing.
Yep.
But it was Diana Krall's version. And in it is a line, and I can almost see through the dark there's a light. And I was like, oh, that soothed me to hear. And so I am like, anytime something like that, I read it in a book, I hear it in a song, I hear it, somebody say it, and I'm like, I have to make a post because if it made me feel better to hear that or made me contemplative, it might make somebody else feel that way too. And so I go into Canva and I made a little thing. That one went viral. And I found it interesting because I think it went viral because it was perceived as religious. Because the picture I used was, the I won't say it, but the rays coming through that can be seen. And I would say 90% of the comments were the word amen. And so I thought, well, we're going viral, but that isn't exactly how I meant it.
Yes.
But then
Yep.
again, whatever it is that gives you hope, and faith is certainly a protective
Yep.
factor. And, I was going to say, God bless people who have it, but that's a limited thing to say because there are other gods. But
I mean, you can say whatever you want here, and it's on the receiver to take that how they want to take it, whether they take it as this is a literal thing for me or
Higher power.
I understand what you're talking about kind of thing. So
Exactly. So you just never know what's going to resonate with somebody, but I'm also not looking to go viral. I'm looking for anyone who needed to hear or see that message that day. And it is an absolute honor to be a messenger of that, to be able to put that out into the world, because there is so much crap and vitriol and hate and judgment in the world. And that's just not what we're putting out there. So, I've said to my kids, I mean, I'm not, that in the context of mental health, I have to be careful that this is not taken wrong. But were I to die today, and that will not be at my own hands, I will know, I won't know anything, but you know what I mean. I will have done something that mattered.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
Not everybody can say that. And I didn't feel that way doing news, although I tried really hard to do it fairly and accurately and all those things. But I don't know that I was making a difference in the world. And I do believe that I am now. And that's cool. That's, you're doing it too. It's a deeply satisfying experience to know that you are using your powers for good.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that it's like, I also am in a day job where I love my work, but I know anyone else could do it. And it's like, it's not making some huge impact for people. It's getting work for people in our company. And of course that does mean that people are able to feed their kids and all this stuff. But my passion is talking about this kind of thing and doing this sort of content. And so it's like, that's the part that, if for some reason I were no longer here, again, like you said, will not be by my own hand today, my kids would be able to say, you know what, my mom made a difference because she did this. And that's, my dad has that because he's a retired fireman. And so he was really in the community and saving lives and that kind of thing. My grandpa had that. My other grandpa was a preacher and a funeral director. So like they had all of these impacts and stuff. I didn't want to be a fireman. I didn't want to be a teacher like my grandmother was. I didn't want to be a nurse. So I went into something that was just like, I can make money. I'm good at doing this. That's what I'm going to do. And so finding that thing that you're passionate about and turning it into a project that you can keep putting out there to the benefit of other people, I think is something that you should absolutely be proud of, 100%.
And I'll go back to your original question about why I started it. There are like 10 answers to that, and they're all true. It's just sort of like how deep you're going to get into it. But I had a niece who died suddenly. It was not suicide, but she was young, and it was just tragic. And I was at her mother's, my sister's house, and I blew it. We all blew it. None of us knew how to handle the situation. So we were filling the air, right? Just saying stupid things now, I still replay them and think, oh my God. So I realized I did not know how to sit in the dark with somebody. I had no earthly idea how to shut my mouth and just be there. And I decided in my niece's honor to learn how. And so I got certified for sitting with people in hospice. And then I went and trained and worked at a crisis line. Ended up quitting when I said I was a caller. And they were like, ha, that's so funny. And I was like, actually, it's not. I'm going home and going to bed for 2 years. But when I take my journal, I'm doing this and thinking of this like a big funnel, like a distillery or something. And when I put in journalism and voiceover and crisis line and having my own depression, lived experience and all of that, it's like the drop that came out was this. It's just like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do with all of those experiences. And then I have had 2 suicides in my family. And those happened, one of them during this period. And so now it's like, I don't know, maybe that turned up the Bunsen brain. I don't want to belabor this metaphor, but it further emphasized the importance that this work could have, the impact it could have. And so it's not like I'm not over here, but I do
You
think
should, though.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, you deserve your pat yourself on the back. Absolutely. I mean,
we make choices, right?
Yes,
and it's
yes.
nice to, yes. I mean, I guarantee you that there are more lucrative ways to earn a living. There are easier ways to earn a living. There are 40-hour weeks ways to earn a living. There are, I don't know, if I could be making beaded necklaces or cotton candy or something fun and bright and light and, a stand-up comic. Not that I'm funny. I'd have to get funny first. But, there are so many ways to earn a living. And I am, this is an intense one. This is a heavy one. And it is one I believe I'm well suited for. I mean, when I did reporting, it was mostly crime. And when I got my degree, it was as much sociology and criminology as it was journalism. So I think I've always been just a little bit pulled to that dark.
I love that you talk about it distilling down into this one little thing that you can tie it all together with. And that's, isn't it amazing and wonderful how you can use all of your experience to make such a difference to different people? And I mean, it's incredible to me because my background is not similar to yours, but it's very much here's all these things, all these different things that happen, and they were all swirling around, and now all of a sudden they come down to this.
Yep.
So in that way, it's similar, but
it's connecting the dots, right?
Yep,
and some of us just got dots, so you can kind of bop around, and I have. Medical narrations really doesn't fit into this discussion, and I did them for a long time. But it is good when you, I don't know. I don't even know what that, it's not stars aligning, it's like you aligning, right? It's like aligning with yourself, finding your purpose. I think it's that simple. And the only other time I had a mission was to raise my children mindfully, and they're in their 30s now. So, it's not like done, but, it's certainly not a full-time thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you had any moments of connection with a listener that stand out to you in terms of impact?
Well, I talked about the you said listener specifically, but there have been a number of people in the Facebook community who
that's fine too.
Had relationships with, but the it's so interesting because I can't do it with 350 whatever episodes anymore. But I used to be like, well, John, Magdalene, or, I could remember who they all were. There are some people who, like, I wonder, not on a daily basis, I probably wonder about someone. And I'm like, I hope he's okay, And when I reach out to someone who I know was an attempt survivor and they don't write back. Now they might just be like, honey, I did your stupid podcast 6 years ago. Leave me alone. But I'm just like, are you okay? And then I get a little nervous. I think, and they may have just changed their email address or just not want to talk to me. There have been people, and I hesitate to tell these stories because I'm not comfortable saying, well, I died because I don't believe it's true that we saved anyone's life, because people save their own lives and because we are the messengers, right? So it's someone else's story. So whoever's story they heard that's what impacted them. We've had people, and when I was in news, if somebody complained or if somebody said great job, there's some formula that one person represents more, right? And I don't know what that formula is. I didn't know then, I don't know now. But I figure if more than a handful of people have said that they were going to kill themselves and didn't. That something about hearing someone's story convinced them that they were ill and not defective, not bad, not worthless. I'm like, I'm sweating. It is, those affect me.
Yeah.
I remember their names, and I am stunned, stunned that is true.
Yeah.
And it also makes it impossible to quit. Every time I think, I was not this old when I started this, and, I have not changed the pace, and it's one a week, and it just, and I think I can't do this anymore. And then I think about Jeff, and I think his story was that he's a painter, really beautiful paintings, but they had changed. They were very bright, they were very vibrant, they were flowers, they were butterflies, literally. And then he was doing a series of, I think it was 6 huge paintings about depression. And they were dark. They were, one was a light switch, and, that was quite a metaphor. And when he finished the last one, he was going to be finished. And he listened to the podcast. And the people who say, I just Googled depression. Why did you? I mean, I never Googled depression podcast.
Yeah.
It never crossed my mind that might help. I don't know. There really weren't as many podcasts either, but I hadn't named it as depression. So when, there's some really primal survival instinct at play, when you are deeply, actively suicidal, and you are looking for something that might change your mind, or might change your perspective, or might change your course, or might shift something. And that is something. That is powerful. That is, I don't even have the words to describe what that is. So lucky to be, have been in the right place at the right time with the right keywords, I'm just so glad they found it. I'm just so glad they found it. And the whatever episode they listened to that day wasn't light or about breathing or mindfulness, something that is very relevant to mental health, back to the tools we've been talking about, but may not have had that impact on them. Again, I'm never sure if I answered your question because I got so lost in my story that I can't remember what it was.
It absolutely does. And some, especially for some questions, it's like this, the rambling is what you're after,
Yeah, I'm a rambler.
That's okay.
Just fucking ladies man. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, yes, there are lots of things in the toolkit that can make a difference, but boy, the biggest impact sometimes is hearing a story that gives you a little bit of hope because it's similar to yours, or that gives you a little bit of hope because you're like, oh, I haven't tried that. They talked about this. Right. I haven't tried that yet. And it's a real thing from a real person instead of just here's 10 ways to handle your depressive symptoms.
Gosh. Why is everything numbers these days?
I know.
It's 4 ways
really
this and 6 ways of this and the 10 things you gotta, and and I click on them like a total. I mean, I know it's clickbait.
Everyone does.
What are the 4 ways to know if you're in love? Yeah. Jeez.
And that's been going on since it was, what was it, Teen Girl, with all the magazines where back in the 90s where it was like, here's 5 ways to get rid of pimples. Like it started way back then and it's just gotten so much more pervasive now.
Yeah. I always wonder.
And into the mental health space too.
Yep. I know that's insulting to me.
Yeah.
Do not tell me there are 4 ways to avoid depression. Do not tell me there. I mean, just don't. I get a lot of people wanting to do, episodes and they're like, this is the cure for depression or this is the way to avoid depression. I think, please don't do that. Don't do that. Because what if someone tries it and it doesn't work? And then they believe the cure, capital T, capital C, did not work. Well, okay, that was irresponsible, and then just all the rest of it is also, I think. But yes.
Well, I think that's why you don't ever run out of things to say on your podcast either, because it's all about what worked for your, instance, for your story. What is your story? What worked for you? And it's never the same. Like that's the thing, is that it is never the same, one person to the next. And it's beautiful that way because you can pick up little things from little conversations and try them. And if it doesn't work, then put it down and try something else. So I think that's fantastic.
And for me, it's the language too. I have found so many metaphors. I love metaphors, but just how someone describes their depression, how someone describes getting out of it, how someone describes active reaching out, how someone describes not. All of those things, it's like I now have more language to use to express what depression is and what it feels like and what it sounds like and all of those things. And that's, I think, a real benefit as well.
Absolutely. Well, it is time for our magic moment of the stream. So I do have a wand, and this is the magic wand.
I love magic wands.
If you could wave this magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be in this magical world?
I love this magical world. If I had like 5 minutes, I might pick a different one, but 5 seconds, I'm going with that it has anything to do with us, that it's our fault, that we are weak, that we are not handling life's curveballs as well as someone else, that we gave up, that we leaned into it. I was asked if I have surrendered to my depression. It was a live interview, and I was like, in the same way I might surrender to somebody who just, is mugging me and I'm in a ball on the ground trying to keep my head, do I surrender to it? But I do think we can lean in, lean out a little bit. So I think that just that it is a common and treatable illness and common treatable to different degrees for different people, certainly. And that, I don't like that. I mean, it offends me on such a deep level because there are so many factors that can play into it. And that's the cure thing. That's why the 7 ways to cure it. Don't tell me that is going to cure my childhood trauma. Don't tell me it's going to cure generations of genetics that predisposed me to this. There are factors I can control. There's a whole bunch I can't. And I'm trying. Yeah. We're all trying. Yep.
We are all trying. That is the truth.
That is the truth.
Well, I think that's a great thing to try to eliminate. It would be wonderful, honestly. And I love these little magic moments because it's like in a perfect world, if all of these could just come together.
Oh my gosh, right?
Boy, how lovely it would be.
You're not yourself, Terry. Let's talk.
Yep.
What can I do for you? How can I support you? What kind of thoughts are going through your head right now that have you looking like you look? Talking like you talk. But they don't. But we're working on it. We're both working on it. Lots of us are working on it.
Absolutely. Fiona says, I've been lurking and listening while cooking dinner, and while I haven't been here for long, I can already understand how folks could resonate with you and feel like your podcast is helpful. And she also says, you approach depression with such kindness. And I agree. I mean, I've listened to your podcast, and it's one of those things that is just easy. It's easy to just let it keep going to the next one.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And keep listening. A lot. Yep. So we are kind of at the end here. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. Terry, I'll just turn it over to you and say if there's anything we didn't talk about or anything you want to throw out there as far as resources. I will post all of your socials again, including the link to your podcast and Facebook community. But I'll just hand the mic over to you, as it were.
I will name a couple of organizations that I think are great. The AB Core Foundation for Mental Health, they're our current funder, so I definitely have to start with them. And their premise is largely the interconnectivity of mental and physical health, right? That you cannot separate them. And so the benefit of caring for your body is also caring for your mind. Cereal for Dinner, I thought is just a great organization. I'm pretty sure it's .org. And it's just what you would think, right? When you just can't even. You can just have cereal for dinner, but it's really practical tips, having wet wipes next to your bed and, you can't get up to wash your face or whatever. And, having granola bars and bottles of water and things like that. I really appreciate that one. Courage for Caregivers, because lots of us who are in families, that it's not just us living with depression or anxiety or bipolar disorder or whatever it might be. It's really hard to take care of somebody else who's hurting when you are. Families for Depression Awareness. is another organization that I really like. And then I have to do a shout out to John, however you say his last name, Roedel. It's a short writer. I don't know if he's short or if his things are short. I don't know what's short, but that's what his thing says. John, Roedel, a short writer. So I know he's on a lot of social media. And if Kathleen is still here, the Little Heart Project, I was holding off on saying that because I'm not 1,000% sure it's not hearts. But you can look that up, and it'll be tomorrow's episode.
Okay. The Little Heart Project.
The Little Heart Project.
Yep, that's correct.
Good.
Yep.
All right.
So I'm posting all of these links. If y'all want to get more information on any of these, feel free to click through to any of those. And then I will, like I said, I posted all of those. So if you want to subscribe to the podcast and anything like that, you're welcome to check that out as well. Yep.
And if
Bite
you're not
Mark,
good with podcasts, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Bite Mark says, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I had a great time. Discovered a new poet to read and a new podcast to listen to. Yes.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate that. And yeah, John's great.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to go ahead and end here. So chat, give me just a minute and I'll be back. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. I'm here to remind you that your mental health and your creativity can coexist, fueling your passions and contributing to your overall well-being at the same time. I hope that our conversation today and the exploration of the relationship between mental health and content creation has provided you with some food for thought. Remember, as a content creator, your mental well-being matters. Take time to prioritize self-care, seek support when you need it, and embrace vulnerability in your creative process. Your voice and your stories are critically important, and they deserve to be nurtured with compassion. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear from you, so feel free to share your thoughts and experiences with me on social media or through the website tacosfallapart.org. And if you found this episode helpful, please consider leaving a review or rating on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more people. Remember, even when tacos fall apart, creativity has the power to heal, connect, and inspire. So embrace the journey, celebrate your unique voice, and continue to create from a place of authenticity and self-care. Until next time, take care of yourself, nurture your creativity, and keep shining your light through the power of content creation.